Hi, it's Christy in Calgary coming at you. Today's video is all about what successful traits do South African immigrants possess? What makes you a success in Canada as a South African immigrant? It's a bit of a interesting, controversial topic, but we're gonna dive right in. For some people, the definition of success is going to be different. It's going to look like a healthy, happy life here in Canada, and for other people, it's going to be being a business tycoon. It's really up to you, and for you to know what your success is, you kind of have to define it, which is a bit of a cliche, but it's true. One thing I'll say is there's definitely some unifying factors that I have seen with the last 20 years of being here in Canada with South African immigrants who have done super well. Okay, trait number one that I think all South African immigrants have, which really serves them well, is emotional and mental resilience. That means your ability to be able to deal with crises and stressful situations with a sense of agility and flexibility. If you are the type of person that bad traffic can completely ruin your day and destroy things for you, moving to another country and experiencing an entire culture shock, it might not work for you. It might not be the best. I want to say though, however, like you feeling like you have difficulties in South Africa and that being a reason that you want to move or you having complaints about it, that's a different perspective. However, you need to have like a sense of a boer with a plan maak, no matter how bad the situations get, and sense of kind of optimism to keep going. I'm not talking about toxic positivity where everything is great even when it's not great. What I mean is having the strength and character and endurance to keep on going. That will really serve you well as an immigrant. Actually, I would say it's a necessity as an immigrant. You have to think of immigration as the long game. You can't keep thinking of it in short terms of like, we'll try it out for a little while and see if it works. We'll give it 6 months, we'll give it a year. And if it really isn't great, then we'll come on back. If you can't think of immigration in the sense of an entire changing of your life, and you think of it always as having a backup plan, it's not going to work. I look back with the perspective of 20 years and I am so grateful that my family did the move and they did the sacrifices that they did, because now I see the dividends that have paid off. However, I'm going to be honest with you. I had family who came here and gave it a try and immigration was not for them. And if there's something that I can do in delivering these videos to you is to help you make the decision as best as you can with the knowledge that you have to see whether immigration is actually a fit for you. So overall, you have to have a long-term perspective to survive as an immigrant and to thrive in the long term. Point number 3, you gotta know how to play the game. And as someone who doesn't really know sports but married someone who really loves sports, there are the rules of the game which are in the playbook, and then there's the way that the game is actually played, and those are two very different things. And that is the same thing in Canadian society. Canadian society is like got a lot of protocol, and I have a whole video about the 11 cultural differences between Canadians and South Africans where I go way more in depth. But I'll give you an anecdote. I was driving a car with a car sharing service and it was really bad weather, snow, the car started to skid. I phoned them and I said, I have to leave the car in outside of the zone area because it's not safe for me to drive. I checked my bill a few weeks later and I have this hefty charge for car abandonment. I could have just been like, oh, okay, I guess I'll just pay the fee because I left the car. But I also knew that if I just asked a few more questions, I could potentially get out of that situation. And I asked them, hey, what was I supposed to do? Drive an unsafe vehicle and risk people's lives? And they were like, oh yeah, maybe that wasn't the best idea. We'll take away the fee. This is not a huge example, but it's this little in between where you kind of able to push against the rules a little bit, and you do it in a polite way, Canadian way. I'm still learning how to do this better, so 20 years down the road and I'm still doing it. Like my husband, he's just a Jedi. He can just change people's perspectives really easily, so I'm still learning quite a bit from him as well. But yeah, that is a successful trait of South Africans who learn the rules of the system and then also learn how to push them a little bit as well. This goes with point number 3. It's point number 4. Successful South African immigrants to Canada have a certain degree of tenacity. They are willing to ask for things that go outside of the status quo. And I think a lot of South Africans have a natural tendency for this. Like, jy kan nie 'n Yolandi keer nie. She will do what she wants to do. And I think it's actually a superpower that South Africans have and they should use to their advantage. I hope that with time, if you're a South African living in Canada, you don't have that ironed out of you too much and you use it strategically at certain points. But I have seen other South Africans, their willingness to just ask for something a little bit more and just go a little bit extra and do a bit better in service has really propelled us forward in certain positions and has made for great opportunities. Being willing to get on the phone and talk to people and be comfortable talking to people, that's something a millennial generation's a bit awkward with sometimes. But I find because I was willing to do that, I was able to get into certain positions and achieve certain goals way more easily just because I was able to get on the phone with people and ask for things directly. And as one of the business leaders that I once knew and worked for, he always said, if you don't ask, you don't get. And I think South Africans have that ability, the ones that I've seen really succeed, to not lose that bit of their South Africanness where they have tenacity, and that is what makes for a successful South African living in Canada. It's just that little bit of edge. Point number 5 comes along with tenacity, and that is being willing to be hungry. I think jy moet honger wees vir success. It's the whole idea of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's something that can push you forward. And I'll share my personal example. When my parents came to Canada, we didn't have a ton of funds, and my dad got into work immediately, and my mom had to do some accreditation and additional volunteer hours. But then my parents went to work as janitors after their full-time work during the day, and then later on when my position opened, my brother joined in. So they would work a full day, they would then go work in the evening as a janitor. Not a super glamorous job, even though they were qualified professionals in other fields. And then I would sit in the communal office cafeteria and I would do homework till the evening. And they didn't do this for very long. I mean, later on in life with management of properties and doing contract work in their specialized fields, once they were able to get that work and get all of their accreditation turned around, they were able to have greater success that way. And it took a while because they had to build social capital to get those positions and those contracts and get the accreditation, but they weren't scared of getting their hands dirty. They weren't offended by the idea of picking up garbage in a building to make enough money so they could get a little bit of extra cash so they could try and get ahead. And that hunger and that drive that you get from hunger is what makes for success as a South African living in Canada. I just want to add to that point. Being able to work an additional job and make additional money for our family, my family never looked at it down upon it. They looked at it as a privilege, the opportunity to have a job, because I know how difficult it is for people in South Africa who have faced unemployment. The idea of even getting a second job to make additional money, it's like a dream come true. So I would say you are hungry and you look at any work as a privilege to do so that you can build your resume, you can build your social capital, and you can build your success as a South African living in Canada. One of the biggest things that you can do as a South African living in Canada looking for success is to have emotional intelligence when it comes to relationship building. On my old jobs, we used to say, jou netwaarde is jou netwerk. Your net worth is your network. I think this is an important perspective to have because you're coming to Canada and you are starting at zero when it comes to your social capital and your network of people. And if you realize that, you also realize you need to invest of yourself to build relationships in meaningful ways, communities, casual relationships, but also professional relationships into the future. And you have to spend your time and money accordingly. You always have to think of it as if you were dating. And you know, if you're strategic with dating, which sounds so anti-romantic, I realize that as I say it right now. However, if you're being strategic with building a relationship, you're going to be clever about where you spend your time and your efforts and your energies. So if you're going to be going to the bar at 2 o'clock every morning to try and meet a potential mate who has got perspectives of success and wanting to go forward in life, that might not be the best place to meet them. Dating analogy aside, you really have to think strategically about where you spend your time. Are you going to be going out to functions to network? Are you going to be going to churches to build a faith community or friendships with people? Are you getting out there? Are you willing to put your hand up on some of the Facebook groups and say, hey, I would like to connect with someone? Super vulnerable thing to do, but actually do it. I'm surprised sometimes. There are South Africans who come to Calgary and come to Canada, and they'll post in the Facebook groups, and I will be like, hey, if you need anything, PM me, send me a private message and I can respond. And especially if it's a particular request which I know I can help with. And people never respond. And I think, here I am, I'm willing to help. People are willing to, as long as you ask and you are specific about it. You never know. And that is so surprising to me, because if you really want to be successful, you've got to be willing to be vulnerable. You've got to be willing to open yourself to new relationships. Some of them may not work. Some of the friendships you might not have forever. It may just be for a season. But if you close yourself off and you just watch Netflix at night for hours upon end and you're socially isolated, you're never going to it will take you longer to get where you want to go eventually, and to have that success of a great community that you can reach out to and a network to get out there and build your career as well. Point number 7 for South Africans who live in Canada and have success. I think you need to know when to move on from your starter job. Landing that first job and that opportunity is wonderful, and I think you have put so much effort out there and you're doing all these other things around your work life and trying to settle in. You can spend time at your starter job. You have to build your resume, you have to get experience. However, you don't want to get stuck. Because most likely that starter job wasn't your ideal job, or it wasn't the same level of seniority that you even had back in South Africa. So you need to be clever about when you are moving and if you're moving, and how long you're going to be spending at that job, and the relationships that you build to try and move out of that position as well. I think the days of thinking that you're going to stay at one job for a long period of time and you're going to like plug in and you're going to build your social capital forever and it will have a lot of promotion, that doesn't exist anymore. I think that ended a generation before. The same one that thought like university degrees were automatically going to get you a job. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think unless you're in a particular profession that's very streamlined, like medical profession or lawyer, like you have to sometimes move around and be willing to go to different places. And the ability to know when your starter job in Canada has served you enough is important for that transition, and to transition well and not burn bridges. That's another key point as well. Okay, on to the final point of this video. I think South Africans who have great success in Canada have the ability to become Canadian. I think you must be willing to change. I think if you're an immigrant who comes into Canada and you're like, I want to just be here for the opportunities, I don't want to change myself to fit into society, you might have difficulty succeeding in the long run. Now, I'm not talking about changing your core beliefs of who you are as a person and throwing your character out the window. Not at all, but I think you need to be okay when you experience cultural differences and put yourself aside for a little while and be accepting of the Canadian way. I think if you stick into just the way South Africans do things, or you just watch South African content, or you just want to hang out with other South Africans, you're gonna miss out on so much. And more than that, if you are going to be a successful immigrant from South Africa and Canada, you are going to change eventually. It's a hard thing to say, and you'll be like, well, I want to keep my South African ways, and I'm unique, and this is who I am. You'll be surprised when you strip away living in a country, how the things that you thought you held onto were just part of the society you were living in. They weren't actually your fundamental core values. And I think people who are willing to change and adapt, explore different perspectives, and adapt to Canadian perspectives are the people who ultimately find greater success in Canada, because they know how to have social graces, they know how to connect with people, they know when an issue is a big issue and when it's not a big issue. That, I would say, the ability to be willing to shift and change a little bit will serve you in the long run so much. Okay, well, those were my 9 points. Those are my 9 points about successful South Africans here in Canada. I would love to hear if there's anything that I've left out. If you're a South African who's lived here for a while, or things that you wish that you just could have told yourself, oh, this would make this so much more easy, or if I did this, man, I would have had so much greater success in the field that I wanted. Feel free to put it in the comment sections below. I'd love to hear your perspective as an immigrant, or I'd love to hear your questions as a South African who wants to live in Canada. What do you want to know about? What questions do you have that I can potentially help answer? Anyway, loved talking to you. This was really passionate and fascinating and fiery topic. I hope that you can subscribe. I'm doing an entire series about being a South African living in Canada with a 20-year perspective. And if you want to follow along on my everyday life, my Instagram is Christy in Calgary, and you can see what my day-to-day life is here. Hope to talk to you soon.